Nia stood in the center of the $10 million penthouse, shaking. Rainwater dripped from her cheap yellow poncho, staining the pristine Persian rug dark. 3 silenced Glocks were pointed directly at her chest. In front of her sat Viktor Volkov, the butcher of St. Petersburg. He didn't look at his bodyguards. He looked only at her. "You have 5 seconds, Viktor whispered, his voice like grinding gravel. "Tell me why you didn't leave the food at the door. Tell me why you are still breathing my air." Nia gripped the thermal bag until her knuckles turned white. She knew if she stuttered, she died. "Because," she breathed, her voice cracking, "the maintenance van outside has reinforced suspension, and your lobby guard just missed his check-in by 12 seconds. Viktor froze. The room went dead silent. 3 hours earlier, Nia was just a ghost in the city's machinery. Rider 429. No face, just a bicycle and a delivery timer ticking down. When you grow up in the foster system, you learn to read the streets differently. You notice the cars that sit too low. You see the shadows wealthy people ignore. That night the app pinged, "Priority drop." The Obsidian Tower. It was a fortress of glass and steel rising above the slums. Most riders hated the Obsidian, too much security, too many questions. But Nia was 3 days late on rent. She didn't know that accepting that order was signing a contract with the devil. She pedaled into the freezing rain, thinking she was just delivering dinner. She was actually delivering the only warning that could save a monster. If this story pulled you in, you're in the right place. Subscribe, drop your location in the comments, and be part of the family. The silence in the room was absolute. The only sound was the rhythmic drumming of rain against the floor-to-ceiling glass. Dmitri, the head of security, clicked the safety off his weapon. The metallic snick was loud, deliberate, and final. "She's stalling," Dmitri growled, stepping into Nia's personal space. The heat radiating off him was oppressive. "It's a scout tactic. Distract the target, keep him talking while the team breaches. I'll put her down." Nia flinched, her shoulders hunching instinctively, waiting for the flash of the muzzle. "Wait." The command was soft, barely a whisper, but it froze Dmitri mid-step. Viktor Volkov hadn't moved from his chair. His eyes, pale and unblinking, were fixed on Nia's trembling hands. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass, watching the vortex. "You said the suspension was reinforced," Viktor said, his voice devoid of emotion. "How does a girl who rides a bicycle know the payload capacity of a utility van?" Nia opened her eyes. The terror was still there, cold in her stomach, but something else was rising to meet it. Desperation. She had nothing left to lose. If she died here, she died anonymous, just another body to be rolled into a carpet. "Because I used to live in one," she said, her voice gaining a sudden jagged edge. "When I was 16, my foster dad was a mechanic. I know what a vehicle looks like when it's carrying half a ton of dead weight. That van isn't carrying tools and it isn't carrying wire. It's carrying men." She took a breath, looking past the gun barrel and directly at the scar running down Viktor's cheek. "And the street lamp. It's a sodium bulb. They last 20,000 hours. It was working yesterday. Tonight, it's the only dark spot on the block. Right where a sniper would need cover." Dmitri scoffed, keeping the gun leveled at her forehead. "Coincidence? The city is falling apart. You're guessing." "Maybe," Nia shot back, the adrenaline finally overriding her survival instinct. "Or maybe you're so used to people fearing you that you stopped looking for the ones who don't." Viktor stood up. The movement was fluid, terrifyingly graceful for a man of his size. He walked around the chessboard, his shoes silent on the rug, until he towered over her. He looked down, studying her face like it was a complex tactical map he hadn't seen before. "Dmitri sees threats," Viktor said quietly. "You see patterns." He leaned in, the scent of vodka and violence rolling off him. The air in the room felt pressurized, ready to explode. "But Dmitri is loyal. You are a stranger with a pizza box and a death wish. So tell me before I let him pull that trigger. Why should I believe a delivery girl?" 3 hours earlier, the city was trying to drown her. Nia hunched over the handlebars, her legs burning as she pedaled against a wall of freezing rain. She was just a yellow smear in the rearview mirrors of angry taxi drivers, invisible and disposable. Her phone, mounted to the handlebars in a waterproof pouch, glowed with a pathetic number: $28.50. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. She drifted across 3 lanes of gridlocked traffic, her eyes darting constantly. Left. A pothole deep enough to snap a rim. Right. A distracted driver texting in a BMW. Ahead. A pedestrian stepping off the curb without looking. Most people looked at their phones. Nia looked at the variables. It was a habit burned into her circuitry during 10 years in the foster system. In those houses, you learned to read the temperature of a room before you walked into it. You learned that a shifting shadow meant a raised hand, and the smell of cheap whiskey meant you needed to disappear. Survival wasn't about fighting. It was about seeing the blow before it landed. She skirted a bus, feeling the heat of its exhaust on her frozen shins. Her lungs rattled. She was 22 years old, and her entire life fit into a backpack and a thermal delivery cube. Ping! The notification cut through the noise of the storm. A priority order. Nia wiped the water from the plastic screen. The payout was $50. A massive search. But then she saw the destination and her stomach dropped. The Obsidian Tower. Every rider knew the place. It was a monolith of black glass on the edge of the financial district. The security was hostile, the service entrance was a maze, and the tenants were people who didn't look at you when they signed the receipt. It was a headache. It was a trap. She hovered her thumb over the decline button. Her knees were shaking, not just from the cold but from exhaustion. She could go home. She could eat ramen and sleep in her clothes to stay warm. Then her phone buzzed again. A text from her landlord. Rent is past due. Locks change at 8 a.m. Nia looked at the tower rising like a tombstone in the distance. The $50 wouldn't fix her life, but it would buy her another week of shelter. Another week to be invisible. She gritted her teeth and tapped accept. The GPS rerouted. The blue line snapped toward the tower. Nia stood up on the pedals, forcing her tired muscles to respond. She didn't know she was racing toward a massacre. She just knew she couldn't be late. The Obsidian Tower didn't look like a building. It looked like a weapon aimed at the sky. Nia skidded to a halt near the service bay, the rain stinging her face like needles. She fumbled with her bike chain, her fingers numb and clumsy, desperate to get inside the warmth. She stood up and wiped the water from her eyes. That's when she saw it. A white Ford Transit van was idling in the no-standing zone directly across the street. The logo on the side said City Electric. It looked boring, unremarkable, exactly the kind of vehicle your eyes slide right over. But Nia's eyes didn't slide. They stuck. She looked at the tires. The city had been a churning mess of gray slush and oil for 3 days. Every car on the road was coated in a film of grime. But the van's tires were jet black. Pristine. The treads were clean. It hasn't been driving, she realized. It was dropped here. She stepped closer, the water pooling in her sneakers. She looked at the rear wheel well. The chassis was riding dangerously low, the fender almost scraping the rubber. She knew that stance. Her foster dad used to load engine blocks into the back of his truck, and it would squat just like that. That van wasn't carrying copper wire or fuses. It was carrying something dense. Something heavy. Nia looked toward the front entrance. 2 security guards in tactical vests were laughing, smoking cigarettes under the awning. They were watching the people, puffing their chests out, performing authority. They weren't watching the street. They didn't see the clean tires. They didn't feel the weight of the silence coming from that van. A cold knot of nausea twisted in her stomach. Turn around, her instinct screamed. Get back on the bike. Take the penalty fee. Just go. She gripped the handle of the thermal bag. She thought about the eviction notice taped to her door. She thought about the cold sidewalk waiting for her if she didn't make rent. Just a delivery, she whispered to the rain. In and out. Don't look at anything. She turned her back on the van and pushed the buzzer for the service door. The lobby smelled of ozone and aggressive wealth. It was a cathedral of black marble, designed to make anyone earning less than 7 figures feel like an intruder. Nia squeaked across the polished floor, her wet sneakers leaving a trail of muddy footprints that made the concierge wince. The head of lobby security sat behind a desk that looked like a slab of obsidian. He was wide-bored and scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up as Nia approached. He just held out a hand for her ID. "Service elevator only," he grunted, tossing her badge back onto the counter. "And wipe your feet. If you track mud into the lift, I'm docking your company's access." Nia grabbed her ID, her hands trembling slightly. She glanced at the wall behind him. A bank of 12 high-definition monitors displayed every angle of the building's perimeter. Her eyes locked onto screen 4. It showed the street entrance she had just come from. But the center of the frame was a void of darkness. The street lamp directly in front of the main doors, the one that should have been flooding the sidewalk with orange light, was dead. "Sir," Nia said, her voice quiet. The guard finally looked up, his expression shifting from boredom to annoyance. "What?" "Camera 4, she pointed. "The street lamp is out. It creates a blind spot right in front of the loading zone." The guard laughed, a sharp, dismissive bark. "The bulb burned out, sweetheart. It happens. You here to deliver pizza or give me a structural engineering report? It's just..." Coupled with the van across the street. "The van is city maintenance," he snapped, leaning forward. "Which is who I'll call about the light when I'm good and ready. Now get in the elevator before I call your dispatch and tell them you're harassing the staff." Nia looked at him. He was armed, armored, and surrounded by millions of dollars in technology, yet he was completely defenseless. He was so confident in his authority that he couldn't see the noose tightening around the building. She felt a strange, cold pity for him. "Okay," she whispered. "Sorry." She stepped into the service elevator and hit the button for the penthouse. As the heavy steel doors slid shut, she saw the guard look back down at his phone, ignoring the black hole on screen 4. The lock engaged with a heavy mechanical thud, sealing her in. There was no going back now. The elevator doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum. The penthouse was vast, swallowed in shadow. The only light came from the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting the blue-gray pallor of the storm across the room. It smelled of aged leather, premium scotch, and the metallic tang of gun oil. In the center of the room sat Viktor Volkov. He was facing the window, his back to the elevator, watching the rain lash against the glass. He sat in a high-backed leather chair, perfectly still. He didn't turn around. He didn't acknowledge the chime of the arrival. To him, Nia wasn't a guest. She was a utility, no more significant than the thermostat or the light switch. 2 men stood in the corners of the room. They wore suits that cost more than Nia made in a year, tailored to hide the bulk of shoulder holsters. They tracked her movement with dead, shark-like eyes. Nia's breath hitched in her throat. The air pressure in the room felt heavier, as if the oxygen was being hoarded by the man in the chair. Every instinct she had screamed, "Run!" "Table!" A voice rumbled from the chair. It was deep, bored, and absolute. Nia walked forward, her wet sneakers squeaking agonizingly on the hardwood before she reached the Persian rug. She placed the thermal bag on a glass side table. Her hands were shaking so bad the zipper rattled. Viktor didn't move. He didn't say thank you. He didn't check the order. He simply continued to watch the city he owned, confident that his command would be obeyed and the intruder would vanish. Nia stepped back. She had done her job. She was free. She turned toward the elevator. The button was glowing soft white. Escape was 3 steps away. She could go back down to the lobby, past the arrogant guard, out into the rain, and forget she ever saw the city electric van with the clean tires. She took 1 step. Then she saw the reflection in the dark glass of the elevator door. She saw herself, small, wet, shivering. And she saw the back of Viktor's head. If she left, he was dead. The man in the lobby was dead. The logic was cold and undeniable. The trap was perfect, and she was the only one who had seen the trigger. She squeezed her eyes shut, cursing her own foster care hypervigilance. She stopped. She turned back to the room. Sir. The silence that followed was terrifying. The guard shifted, hands drifting toward their lapels. Victor finally moved. He slowly rotated the chair. The leather creaked. He looked at her. It wasn't an angry look. It was the look a man gives a mosquito before he crushes it. I didn't order conversation, he said. The maintenance van outside, Nia blurted out, her voice trembling but loud enough to echo off the glass walls. The city electric one. It's a setup. One of the guards, a man with a jagged scar across his nose, stepped forward with a sneer. Boss, she's fishing for cash. I'll toss her down the chute. Victor didn't look at the guard. He kept his eyes locked on Nia. Let her speak. It's been raining since Tuesday, Nia said, the words spilling out fast now that she had permission. Every car on that street is covered in mud. But that van? The tires are jet black. The wheel wells are clean. It didn't drive here from a depot. It was dropped off nearby. She took a breath, pointing a shaking finger toward the window. And the suspension is bottomed out. I know what a work van looks like when it's full of tools. That van is sitting 3 inches too low. It's carrying over 1,000 pounds of dead weight. And the street lamp directly above it. The only one on the block that's dark. The room went deathly silent. The guard with the scar scoffed, reaching for Nia's arm. She's paranoid. Probably high. Touch her and you lose the hand, Victor said softly. The guard froze. Victor stood up, his movement slow and deliberate. He walked toward Nia, stopping only inches away. He smelled of expensive cologne and cold detachment. He looked down at her cheap, waterlogged sneakers, then up to her terrified eyes. He didn't see a junkie. He saw a scout. You think a delivery girl sees what my head of security missed? Victor asked, his voice low. I see what people ignore, Nia whispered. Rich people don't look at service vans. They don't look at streetlights. You pay people to look for you. But they missed it. Victor stared at her for a long, agonizing 10 seconds. He was dissecting her, looking for the lie. He found none. He turned his head slightly toward the corner of the room. Dimitri, pull up the exterior feed. Camera 4. Dimitri tapped his earpiece, annoyed. Boss, we checked the perimeter 10 minutes ago. It's clear. Check it now. Dimitri sighed and pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen once. Then he tapped it again, harder. His annoyance vanished, replaced by a sudden, sharp intake of breath. Boss, Dimitri said, his voice dropping an octave. The feed is black. The hard line has been cut. The luxury of the penthouse evaporated in a split second. The overhead chandeliers flickered once, buzzed angrily, and died. Total darkness swallowed the room, broken only by the cold blue luminescence of the stormy city outside. They cut the mains, Dimitri hissed, the panic bleeding into his professional veneer. Alarms are bypassed. Sensors are dead. Nia backed away until her spine hit the cold glass of the window. She had been right. The van. The light. The silence. It wasn't a paranoid guess. It was a blueprint for an execution. But the vindication didn't taste sweet, it tasted like bile. She looked at the elevator doors. The digital floor indicator, usually a bright gold, was dead. But a low mechanical vibration hummed through the floorboards. They were coming up. And they weren't taking the stairs. Lobby check. Dimitri screamed into his radio. Static. Just the white noise of dead men. Override the lift, the second guard shouted, rushing to the wall panel. He ripped the cover off and jammed his fingers into the circuitry, but the panel was dead plastic. They hacked the grid, boss. We're locked out of our own system. Victor stood in the center of the blue-lit room, a silhouette against the rain. For the first time, the absolute control he radiated was fractured. His castle had been breached not with a battering ram, but with a wire cutter. He looked at the elevator doors. The vibration was getting stronger. The cables whined. 30 seconds, Victor said. His voice was terrifyingly steady. Maybe less. Dimitri racked the slide of his submachine gun. the sound echoing violently in the quiet room. He looked at the heavy steel door concealed in the mahogany paneling behind the desk. Titanium reinforced. Oxygen scrubbers. Impenetrable. "We can't hold the room, boss," Dmitri yelled, grabbing Victor's arm. "They have the element of surprise and heavy armor. We have to move. Get to the panic room. Now." Dmitri yanked at Victor's tailored suit jacket, his eyes wild. "Boss, the panel is right there. We lock it down, call the reserves, and wait them out." Victor didn't move. He stood like a statue in the center of the darkening room, listening to the mechanical whine of the approaching elevator. If he entered the vault, he would survive. But the girl, the only one who had the intelligence to warn him, would be left outside. She was a witness. The hit squad would peel the skin off her bones to get the panic room code, and when she couldn't give it, they would execute her. More importantly, Viktor Volkov did not hide in his own house. "No," Victor said. "What?" Dmitri screamed, the elevator motor pitch rising to a crescendo. "Unlock the vestibule," Victor ordered, his voice cutting through the panic like a razor. "Disengage the magnetic locks on the elevator doors." Dmitri froze, looking at his boss as if he had suffered a stroke. "They have assault rifles, Victor. You're inviting them in." "I am changing the board," Victor replied. He walked back to the chess table and sat down. He picked up the bottle of vodka, the glass clinking softly in the silence. "A locked door makes them aggressive. Tells them we are afraid. An open door? That makes them hesitate. And hesitation gets you killed." He poured a shot, his hand perfectly steady. "Open it. Now." Dmitri cursed, rushing to the manual override panel by the wall. He slammed the emergency release. The heavy thunk of the magnetic bolts retracting echoed like a gavel strike. Nia watched, her back pressed against the cold window. She should have been terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear was a sudden electric shock of awe. The guards were reacting to the danger. Victor was rewriting it. He wasn't fighting the storm. He was becoming the eye of it. Victor slid a slim black tablet across the polished table toward her. It skidded to a halt inches from her trembling hand. "Pick it up," Victor commanded. Nia reached out, her fingers brushing the cold screen. It flickered to life, showing a grainy black and white feed from a pinhole camera inside the elevator shaft. She saw 5 men in tactical gear, weapons raised, stacking up against the doors. "Watch the hallway," Victor whispered, his eyes locked on the elevator doors. "Don't look away." The elevator chime rang out, a crisp, cheerful ding that sounded obscene in the silence. The doors slid open. 5 figures in black tactical gear filled the frame. They were coiled to breach, battering rams and explosives ready in their hands, expecting a reinforced steel barrier. When the doors glided open without resistance, the lead point man stumbled forward, his momentum betraying him. He raised his rifle, swinging the barrel wildly, searching for the threat. He expected a phalanx of bodyguards. He expected a locked panic room. He expected fear. What he found was Viktor Volkov sitting at a small table, examining a chess piece. Victor didn't look up. He didn't flinch at the 5 laser sights dancing across his chest. He simply rotated the white king in his fingers, his posture relaxed, his breathing slow. The disconnect broke the assassin's rhythm. Their training dictated how to breach a fortress, not how to interrupt a man enjoying a drink. For one agonizing second they hesitated. The leader froze, his brain trying to process the anomaly. Why isn't he running? What does he know that we don't? That second was the checkmate. "Gentlemen," Victor said, finally raising his eyes. They were colder than the storm outside. "You're late." The lead assassin realized the mistake instantly. The open door wasn't surrender. It was a kill box. "Ambush!" the leader screamed, squeezing the trigger. Victor slammed the chess piece down onto the board. The sound was the signal. From the shadows of the periphery, Dmitri and the second guard opened fire. The room exploded into a strobe-like chaos of muzzle flashes and shattering glass. The roar of automatic gunfire drowned out the rain. Nia threw her hands over her head as the vase next to her disintegrated into dust. She saw Victor flip the table for cover, drawing a silver pistol from his waistband in one fluid motion. The lead assassin turned his rifle toward her. She looked into the black void of the barrel. The muzzle flashed. Like and subscribe for part 2 to see the bloodbath.